Good morning, dipshit.org. I'm back for another Leafs report and another kind of underwhelming sort of game. I didn't see all of it because my son had rehearsal last night and I was working on props for a show, and so we didn't get home until, after 8. And as we tuned in, the Leafs were heading for their, I believe, fifth power play of the game, and the commentators were ruminating on the fact that they hadn't scored on the power play yet, and their efforts on the power play up to that point had been pretty sad. Not much puck movement, not any shots hardly, and they just looked kind of disjointed. And there had been a lot of commentary on the Leafs so start and the way they have to play. And before the game even happened, they were playing Washington at home. Ovi was in his locker room being interviewed, as is the routine, and he made some comments about the Leafs, about how it's up to them, how if they ever want to win a Stanley Cup, they have to play differently. They have to play as a team and not for themselves. And just I'm not sure, his comments were kind of vague, but then after the fact, Babcock was asked about it, and he said, well, there's a veteran guy who's just recently won the cup, and he looks over at the Leafs and sees himself as a young player on a good team, and he sees kind of that evolution, and he knows the Leafs need to be different if they do want to have a realistic shot at winning. And Babcock says a comment like that from a guy like that stings even more when it's true, right? So the Leafs in this game were pushed physically because the Caps have Tom Wilson, who, if Tom Wilson played for the Leafs, they'd be 100% different team, or a guy like Tom Wilson. He was in their face all night, and he hit Muzzin. Muzzin went out with an injury. He hit Barry pretty good, even though Barry stayed in the game. It was nice to see Freddie Gauthier come to their rescue and step in. And the Leafs did have a lot of pushback in that regard. They were pushed physically, and they did make some pushback and got into some altercations and stuff. No fights or anything, but they didn't just roll over. And that's my big thing with this team, is they have oodles and oodles and oodles of talent, but they got no pushback. They, like I said, a guy like Tom Wilson on the Caps, Ovi can go out there and do whatever he wants because, well, if somebody gives me guff, Tom will just go straighten him out, right? And sometimes a guy like Wilson crosses the line, but sometimes that sends a message. He says, you do something to my superstar, I don't care if I get you legal or illegal. People think twice about doing something stupid against a team that has a guy like that in the lineup. The Leafs do not have that. The closest guy to that they had was Kadri. He was the only guy who would really give any sort of pushback, and he got sent out on the Kerfoot Barry trade, which has been a great trade. I mean, those two guys have been amazing. But now Hyman's maybe the biggest bulldog, Hyman and Muzzin, but they don't really fight. They don't really. Muzzin hits pretty good. Hyman's a good grinder and likes to muck around and get physical, but they don't have that guy. And I believe if they had a guy like that, this would be 100% different team. And I've always been like that. You look at the Stanley Cup winner every year; they're usually tough, and they're usually Canadians make up the majority of their team. That they're by far the most common nationality on a team, and the Leafs are trending more towards being less Canadian, and they don't have anybody really, any really tough players, right? So. Which hurts me to say that because, I mean, you look at the teams, the Gilmore teams were just tough as nails. That team was lower on talent than a lot of the teams they played against, but they were just so gritty and tough and dedicated, and would just do what it took to win as a team, that they were just amazing. And then you looked at the early 2000, late 90s, early 2000 teams with, they were called the Bay Street Bullies, for God's sake. Roberts and Corson and Tucker and Travis Green and McCabe and Domi and Belak and Marchment. Like, there was not, Yushkevich could crush people. Like, there was very few guys on that team that were afraid of physicality, let alone fighting, right? Like, they were just, those are the teams that I love the most for the Leafs because they were so good and they were so tough. It was hard for teams to come to the ACC or the Gardens or whatever and play against these teams. It wasn't just like, hey, we're going home to Toronto, let's go have a good game, even win or lose or whatever, we're playing the Leafs, we're going to be at home, it's going to be great, it's going to be fun. That's what it's like now. But now, back then, it was like, oh God, we're going to Toronto, we're going to get our asses handed to us. We may not leave alive, like, And now there's no, that's not the case anymore. So I'm a big believer, and they need to draft and develop some strong power forward type players, because now there's no place in the game for the goon anymore, unfortunately. I love fighting. I'm going to admit it. I love fighting. But there is a place for guys like Tom Wilson who can play a bit of hockey and also beat the shit out of people, and that's the perfect kind of guy the Leafs could use. Actually, they could use two of them. I'd love to have a couple guys like that on the Leafs. One defenseman and one forward like that. 100% different team. But we have what we have, and last night, getting back to the game, it was kind of a back and forth affair. Janssen opened the scoring less than a minute in on a nice feed from Matthews from behind the net. He roofed it. But then halfway through the period, Carlson on the Caps, who's had a massive start to the season, ripped one past Anderson. And then so it went 1-1 at the end of the first. And then in the second period, Carlson again ripped another slapper, put the Caps up 2-1. But then Matthews later on, a beautiful tip in front of the net, top cheese, tied it up at 2. And then in the third period, they traded goals again. Matthews got another one, and then I think it was Ovi that got the other one for the Caps. So we went to overtime, tied at 3. And in the overtime, the Leafs took 2 penalties. The second of which was brutal. It was Marner. He was trying for a stick lift. Didn't even come close, and just hit Carlson, I think it was, right in the face with a high stick. And you know, your 4-on-3 power play for, you know, 3 or 4 minutes, like, something's gonna give. And then Ovi from his office at the face-off dot, you know, ripped one past Anderson through a screen. Justin Holl had blocked him to his previous 2 attempts and almost had the third one too. So it was, you know, they were weathering the storm, but it was just too much. And that Marner penalty was just another example of, there was a ton of penalties in this game on both sides, but that was just another example of, just don't use your stick for anything other than shooting or passing the puck. Don't put it on, guys. Don't hook them. Don't slash them. Don't whack them. Don't high stick them. I don't mind stick lifts as long as you're sure. But if you're 8 feet away and your stick isn't even close, don't do it. You're just gonna end up getting a penalty or doing something stupid. And those are the kinds of things that sink you, you know. And it sunk them last night. That was a game they could have easily, you know, had 2 points out of if they just stayed out of the box, but they didn't. And you know, if it was the team that I want with the 2 power forwards, or the power forward and the big defenseman, hey, they could have had as many penalties as they did last night, but at least they would have been better penalties. Maybe they would have had a couple guys leaving the ice surface with injuries rather than the Leafs having a guy leave, you know? Like, that's the stick penalties drive me crazy. But you know what? It was, they battled. They at least scraped a point out of it, I guess, is the glass is half full kind of aspect of it. And yeah, I hope that Ovi's comments, I hope that the little bit of pushback physically they gave last night, I hope they're learning and they're gonna move from here, because this has been a ho-hum start, and it's got me a little bit worried. I'm not gonna lie. I have faith in my Leafs. I love my Leafs, but these 3 straight first round exits, all against physical teams, right? Washington the first year, Boston 2 years in a row after that. Always physical teams that just outmuscle the Leafs. I don't know why they haven't learned the lesson yet. This start in the same kind of path they're going down has me worried. They have all the talent in the world, that there's no doubt about that. But having all the talent in the world on your team gets you through in sports like baseball, you know, or soccer maybe, I don't know, or basketball, I don't know. But in a tough game where you could probably die if you get hit into the boards from behind, and, you know, there's accountability, and there's physicality, and there's grit and determination, you need more than just talent in the game of hockey. It's always been that way, and that's, like I said, that's why the Cup winners always have primarily Canadian players, and they're tough. They may not be a team full of goons and stuff, but they're tough. They block shots, they hit, they finish their checks, they fight when they have to, and they're just tough to play against. And I don't see that from the Leafs right now, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think they're going to win the Cup until they change that. They may get through a first round finally, and even through maybe 2 rounds, but winning the ultimate goal, I don't think they're going to do that until they address the toughness issue. And Dubas doesn't seem willing. He just keeps drafting smaller and speedier players. So I don't know, but those are my 2 cents. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I've learned over my 43 years. And that's what I would do if I was at the reins, but I am not. I am just a travel agent, so nobody really cares. So until next time, I don't even know what day it is right now. It's a Wednesday. Have a great rest of the week. I don't think the Leafs play until Saturday. They've got a big layoff this week, which hopefully will be good for them. But we'll find out soon enough. So long.